What's up, fight fans? This is Let's Discuss MMA channel. And so today we're going to be talking about how Khamzat recently has come out on social media saying that he wants a title shot for the 185-pound division. And we're going to be looking at if he deserves it, what my thoughts are on it, what would be next technically for Khamzat, and such so. So let's get into it. So before we get into the serious question of whether he deserves it or not, let's kind of get into does Khamzat have Dana White privilege like some of these fighters? I think as fans, we fail to realize how much time it takes for a fighter to reach that next title shot, caliber contention, or whatever you want to call it, technically, what it means to be qualified to fight for a title. Just it's been so skewed because of Dana White privilege at times, and I think that whole period time of the Conor-esque era, I think it really showed that if you have the star power to do it, that you'll get a title fight, even if your resume at the time doesn't prove it. So I don't know. Do you think that Khamzat will get Dana White privilege? That one, I'm not too sure. But is it something that does exist within the stardom of fighters? It definitely does. And does Khamzat have the star power? I think he does. So now that we're done with that, let's explain some of the reasons why he doesn't deserve the title shot at this time. So here are a list of guys that are former champions or are current champions that went on numerous accolades in the division before they finally reached that final gold or try to reach for gold. Whitaker, who's had that 7-fight win streak, who's proved himself like time and time against the top level guys. We have guys like Duplessis right before his title reign or title championship, where he was on a 5-fight win streak and he beat Robert Whitaker right before his title shot. And then also we have former champion Sean Strickland, who recently lost to Duplessis, who has been fighting only the top line guys in the middleweight division and has won them pretty convincingly. And then obviously we saw his magnificent performance against masterclass performance against Israel Adesanya, in which he was very sound defensively, even offensively. He stuck very disciplined to his game plan. So the argument that would be made for Hamza at this time would be that he really only has fought one guy at 185, which beat Jared Mearshart earlier on in his career when he was currently fighting at 170. And I think for him to kind of like jump the gun, like I was saying, and try to beat these guys in line, who obviously have put countless hours and time into that division, I think would be definitely unfair for him to, and less deserving than any other, maybe the top 5 guys in that division. And I think the interesting point that Hamza has in his game is that because he has so much star power compared to some of these guys at 185, I think that's why he believes he's ready. And I also believe that just as far as skill goes, it's his wrestling, the improved striking that we've seen, the grit. He has a great chin. He's very durable. The top pressure that he obviously brings in every one of his fights. And the biggest thing right now, I think mentally for him, is just a hunger for that title is just all there. So I think easily he competes and presents a lot of problems for a lot of the guys at middleweight, if not all of them. So in my opinion, obviously the next thing would be, because I believe he doesn't deserve the title shot, would be to fight some of these guys at the 185-pound division. And those names would include, in my opinion, maybe guys like Marvin Vettori, Paulo Costa, Jerry Cannonier, and even in rematch with Ikra would be a lot of fight that I think fight fans would want to see run back, just because both guys have gotten so much better since then. I think a lot of people would want to watch that. Sean Strickland is there. And I guess in his defense, he could even fight the loser of Adesanya and Dricus, which would be a very exciting fight. Whoever wins that fight out or whoever loses that fight out, not sure. But I think that would definitely be one of the fights and matchups that we could potentially see him in. And I believe he can perform very well in each matchup. I think the only person in this division that would be, in my opinion, his toughest fight would be Robert Whitaker, just because of the takedown defense, those blitzes from Whitaker, the speed. And so I think, other than Whitaker himself, I think a lot of the other fights, I think Khamzat has a pretty good shot on him. Definitely pose a threat to each and every one guy, even Robert Whitaker himself. So I think the ceiling for him is very high at 185. I could definitely see him being the next champion, but at this point, I don't believe he deserves a title shot. And just to wrap up the point of this video and why I made it is whether it's not about whether I believed that he deserves a title shot, but it's also to bring out what we see in the UFC nowadays compared to when I was watching it back in the 2000s, or even when I was watching it early on, or even like maybe like UFC 100, UFC 200, at time periods like that, where we didn't really see a lot of guys being able to kind of jump the line to get a title shot. It was always about grinding it out and trying to get as much fights under your belt, trying to get as much wins under your belt. But nowadays, because of what happened with the Conor McGregor era at the time, after he brought so much stardom to the UFC, we see a lot of guys, and I think even as fans at times, we're kind of perplexed at how some guys get title shots, or how not even just title shots, but how an unranked guy all of a sudden gets a fight against a top 5, top 10 guy. I think an interesting point is like even with Alex Pereira, who came into the UFC, and from one fight to another, all of a sudden, like it was a complete difference in matchup and how he jumped rankings. But he presented himself every time and showed the UFC that he could perform. And so I think it's not necessarily bad. I think if you have the star power and you use it accordingly, I think you could definitely skip the line from a lot of guys in the UFC and kind of capitalize on the moment. So I think right now we could see that with Hamzat. I think he definitely has the star power to do it. I think fans love him, but also they believe that fans do not like him. And so because of that kind of fan base that he has, I think he definitely has the star power to skip the line and possibly get Dana White privilege. So that's my take on Hamzat, if he deserves a title shot or not. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll be happy to reply. Thank you for watching.